as he takes you on a chapter-by-chapter, verse-by-verse study of God's letter to you, the Bible. And now here is Pastor Arnold Murray.
Good day to you. God bless you. Say, welcome to the Shepherd's Chapel. Welcome to this family Bible study, our book of Ezra. Ezra meaning help. And Ezra will give you a lot of help concerning the types that would lead to the return of Christ and the building of the true temple, which is to say, Christ being that temple and we being the many-membered body. I want to say a lot of people, because let's say that Ezra and Nehemiah are before the book of Job, that they're older than Job. Well, that's not true, because Job is probably the oldest book in the Bible. They are, as far as placing is concerned, considerably out of order, because they only happened about 450 years, just roughly, before Christ would actually come to the earth. And in a sense, it is a preparation for the coming of Messiah. And the captivities had already taken place naturally. And this is the return, not of the 10 tribes, but of Judah by order of Almighty God through Cyrus, not even an Israelite, to rebuild the temple. And naturally, it would lead up to that time. There was a considerable amount of difficulty in doing this due to the laxness, the fact that they weren't obedient to God to keep the house clean. For we noticed in chapter 2 that most of the people a great many of the people who perform liturgical duties, that's to say priestly duties, if in and around for the temple, were Nethinims, meaning foreigners. God didn't appreciate that. God won't accept that. Now, naturally, after Christ paid the price on the cross, salvation is open to whomsoever will. But that had nothing to do with the priesthood. God expects that to remain clear and pure. A lot of them didn't make muster. They could not find them in the rolls, and they were ousted. So that happening in the last lecture. Let's pick it up now with chapter 4 of the great book of Ezra, verse 1, and it reads, "Now when the adversaries of Judah and Benjamin, these two tribes, heard that the children of the captivity builded the temple unto the Lord God of Israel," verse 2, "then they came to Zerubbabel," that means born in Babel, but he came out, you can rest assured, "and to the chief of the fathers, and said unto them, Let us build with you. For we seek your God as ye do, and we do sacrifice unto him since the days of Esarhaddon, king of Asher, which brought us up hither." Do you know why he brought them up hither? He had taken the adversaries, of course, are the Samaritans. Get that straight in your mind so we get this nailed down. The adversaries being the Samaritans, why were they brought into that place? They were brought into that place because there was a great vacancy of the 10 tribes from Samaria having been taken captivity by this king of Asher. And he rounded up these people, and they were quite a group. You're not going to have it, but in 2 Kings, I just feel I should probably take my time, and 2 Kings chapter 17, you should probably take a home assignment of this particular chapter from about verse 24 through 41. But what happened? Well, I'll just relay it by voice rather than read it. What happened is God was so unhappy about this that he loosed lions on them. And these lions were killing these people that the king of Assyria put in the land of the 10 tribes until, man, they couldn't take it anymore, and they went to the king. They did know one thing. It was the God of Israel that sent the lions. And they asked him, what can we do about this? We can't stand this. We can't live here. Those lions are killing us. And he said, you go get one of their priests and bring one of their priests back there, and he will tell you how to please God, whereby the lions will be removed. Well, that was done. And you'll read it in 2 Kings chapter 17, beginning with about verse 24. And the Samaritans then, what kind of people were they? Well, when you read it, you'll see they were kind of, I don't want to use the word cults, but I don't really know what else to say. That may offend some. But he was just filling territory to have people he could take tax off of, okay? And, but they did try. But here's what you got to know. They still, even though they brought a priest down, they had 5 other gods. And one of them was even the god of burning children. You know, which is the practice of Moloch, is what it's called. There's 5 different religions plus, you know, the one to keep the lions off of them. So they weren't trying. All right. Was it meant that they should? Probably not. But then, you know, this should remind you of something in the New Testament. I want to go with you to John chapter 4 in the New Testament. Inasmuch as it was the Samaritans that were their adversaries. And why am I doing this? I want you to realize it was only a little over 400 years before Jesus would be walking the earth, and this incident happened at the same place. Do you remember when Jesus walked 50 miles one way to Samaria, to Jacob's well, and the Samaritan woman met him there? Well, this is from that same group of people. Pick it up with verse 12 of chapter 4, St. John, and it reads, this is the Samaritan woman saying to him, art thou greater than our father Jacob, which gave us the well, and drank thereof himself, and his children, and his cattle? Yeah, before the Assyrians took him captive, huh? Jesus answered and said unto her, whosoever drinketh of this water shall thirst again. You drink out of that well, you'll get thirsty again. 14, but he, of course, being the living water, spiritually speaking. But whosoever drinketh of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst. But the water that I shall give him shall be in him a well of water springing up into everlasting life. And that's the way it is. When you accept that living water, it can't help but reverberate from you again, touching other souls and bringing not only everlasting life to you, but to other people. And of course, this woman's not going to understand that. She's going to think, boy, that's a long, hot old way down to this well, me carrying these heavy bottles. 15, the woman said unto him, Sir, give me this water, that I thirst not, neither come hither to draw. I don't like making the trip. Let's get this on. 16, Jesus said unto her, Go call thy husband and come hither. Now, what happens then? 17, the woman answered and said, I have no husband. Jesus said unto her, Thou hast well said, I have no husband. Verse 18, For thou hast had 5 husbands, and he whom thou now hast is not thy husband. In that saidest thou truly. And of course, in my mind, I have to connect this with the 5 religions they had, other than a priest that knew the truth that was among them. And they didn't participate therein. And what makes this wonderful is I think it sends a special message And as much as I said they gathered in basically a bunch of cults, I don't like calling people cults, but misfits, perhaps that's better. And what Christ is saying here, I'll open salvation up to you also. But you got to drink of the water, meaning you have to accept Christ as the living water. 19, the woman said unto him, Sir, I perceive that thou art a prophet. I mean, you're knowing quite a bit here. 20, our fathers worshipped in this mountain, and ye say that in Jerusalem is the place where men ought to worship. 21, Jesus said unto her, Woman, believe me, the hour cometh when ye shall neither in this mountain nor yet at Jerusalem worship the Father. Why? Well, in the end times, the Antichrist is coming, of course. And you can worship wherever you are in the Son. Verse 22. Ye worship, you know not what. You know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews, or it should be translated of Judah, all right, the tribe of Judah. 23, but the hour cometh, and now is, when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth, for the Father seeketh such to worship him. He wants sincere people. He wants people, children, that will respect him, will allow our Father to be their king, through the Son, of course. That's important to him. Verse 24, God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. Let's go just a couple more verses here. The woman said unto him, I know that Messiah cometh, which is called Christ. When he is come, he will tell us all things. And what was Jesus' answer to her? Jesus said unto her, I that speak unto thee am he. And she should have picked up on that. What I wanted you to see is the tie-in. That these same Samaritans, back in this day, that were enemies of those that rebuilt the temple, having these, as you will document from 2 Kings chapter 17, as I instructed you, that they worshiped 5 other gods. All they wanted was the lions off their neck, not everlasting life. Isn't it amazing what people will settle for? It would seem, that brings pain to the flesh can become very important to you. And that's only natural, okay? Let's return to chapter 4, the great book of Ezra. Let's pick it up in verse 3. We got trouble. They want to help build this temple. Well, to probably prevent its having been built. Verse 3, but Zerubbabel and Jeshua and the rest of the chief of the fathers of Israel said unto them, Ye have nothing to do with us to build an house unto our God, but we ourselves together will build unto the Lord God of Israel, as King Cyrus, the king of Persia, hath commanded us. Well, now, and this is true, but who commanded Cyrus? Naturally, it was God. But I don't want you to overlook what's going on here. Their intentions are good. They threw off these. But if you lift the curtain of the tent, what do you see? You had 392 Nethinim providing liturgical duties in the temple and helping build, and they shouldn't have been there. They had a blind spot to that. Well, would God allow this? Well, he did. But I imagine that you can understand from that why they had to make such great difficulties, because this will continue on, and they'll have great trouble until an old man named Haggai comes up and said, hey, can't you see you built your own houses? You haven't built God's temple. And this is dragging on. We got a couple of years have gone by since they got here. And they basically haven't started. Verse 4. Have hardly started. Verse 4. Then the people of the land weakened the hands of the people of Judah and troubled them in building. That was their whole plan. Verse 5. And hired counselors against them to frustrate their purpose all the days of Cyrus, king of Persia, even until the reign of Darius, king of Persia. I mean, they held it up for 15 years. Who are these counselors? Well, probably similar today, maybe like the ACLU. And, you know, we get some slicks over here to kind of advise against them, writing letters up to Darius, trying to cause trouble. Verse 6. And in the reign of Ahasuerus, in the beginning of his reign, wrote they unto him an accusation against the inhabitants of Judah and Jerusalem. Verse 7. And in the days of Artaxerxes wrote Blisham. Blishlam means Salom. It's the language just changed to Syriac. And it is the same as shalom in the Hebrew tongue, which means they wrote a peaceful to who? Mitradah, Tabel, and the rest of their companions unto Artaxerxes, Xerxes, that is to say, king of Persia. And the writing of the letter was written in the Syrian tongue and interpreted in the Syrian tongue. In other words, Ezra, being a scribe, brought it forth. Interpreted, whereby it could be read and understood. But it is written in the manuscripts in Aramaic, okay? Verse 8. Rehum meaning merciful, the counselor, and Shimshai, the scribe, wrote a letter against Jerusalem to Artaxerxes, the king, in this sort. Now, I'm going to tell you what. If you're going to get you Rehum, merciful, the counselor, have you ever known, well, I won't beat that old horse, but this little scribe here, Shimshai, do you know what Shimshai means? It means sunny. Now, if you want to get you a scribe, probably one called Sonny would be what you'd want, all right? And so they're simply going to try to put a stop totally and completely to the building of the temple, even though God himself had ordered Cyrus to not only have it built, but to kind of pay for it. Verse 9. Then wrote Rehum, this is the counselor being hired, old Slick, the counselor, and Shimshai, old Sonny, the scribe, and the rest of their companions, I'll get their companions here, all right? This is interesting. The Dinaites, the Aphersikites, going to have a lot of kites here, okay? The Taurites, the Aphershites, boy, there's a good one. The Archivites, the Babylonians, the Shushakites. Now, you all know where Shushan is. It means lily, and mentioned in Daniel, kind of coming from that part of the country, okay? Esther's best. The Dehavites and the Elamites. Boy, what a bunch to draw to, huh? I mean, as far as talk about troublemakers, talk about adversaries. Verse 10. And the rest of the nations whom the great and noble Asnapper brought over, and set in the cities of Samaria and the rest that are on this side of the river, and at such a time. Now, of course, you know who they were, you know who brought them there, and you know what their business is there. You know, Samaria kind of got a bad reputation on through the next 400 and something years. And I guess maybe in senses some of the leaders that took over there deserved it, the reputation, that is to say. Thank goodness Christ was the equalizer. Verse 11, this is the copy of the letter that they sent unto him, even to Artaxerxes, the king, the servants, the men on this side of the river, and at such a time. This was basically the way a legalistic communique was transferred. 12, be it known unto the king that the Jews which came up from thee, the children of Judah, from thee to us are coming to Jerusalem. They're up here, building the rebellious and the bad city, and have set up the walls thereof and joined the foundations, getting a little bit ahead of themselves, but making it sound more so than what was true. 13, be it known now unto the king that if this city be builded and the walls set up again, then will they not pay toll, tribute, and custom? And so thou shalt damage the revenue of the kings. Verse 14. I mean, you start talking money and getting into somebody's pocket a little bit, or they're going to take away from you. And remember, Cyrus is no longer there, okay? 14. Now, because we have maintenance from the king's palace. Now, there's your, we have maintenance from the king's palace. He pays us, okay, got it? And it was not meet for us to see the king's dishonor. Therefore, have we sent and certified the king. Now, this is sometimes there's not much new under the sun, is there? Old Slick put this together, I mean, this lawyer, and he got it all down just right here. And he pushed just the right buttons, you know, to make the king, if he's a little bit on the weak side, to say, hey, this could certainly cost me money. Well, Cyrus put out the money to build it in the first place and gave back all the gold and silver to the Lord's house. Will that do any good here? Well, let's wait and see. 15. That search may be made in the book of the records of the fathers, so shalt thou find in the book of the records, and know that this city is a rebellious city, and hurtful unto kings and provinces, and that they have moved sedition within the same of old time, for which cause was this city destroyed. And of course, he's talking about Solomon, he's talking about David. I mean, you know, they kind of controlled the area for a good long while there. And they're going back in the books of the kings, not our kings, theirs, quite some time, and they know exactly what's in the books. That's what you play the slicks for. 16. We certify the king that if this city be builded again, and the walls thereof set up, by this means thou shalt have no portion on this side of the river. This is just a nice way of saying, king, they are going to strip you bare. You won't have a thing over here. They will take it all. Now, you know, that if a man's not really up on issues and what God has commanded, you're getting pretty close to some people's hearts when you talk like that. Verse 17. Then sent the king an answer unto Raham, the chancellor, And to Shimshai, the scribe, old sonny boy, and old merciful here. I mean, he was real merciful. That was a merciful letter he wrote, wasn't it? Hateful as could be. And to the rest of their companions that dwell in Samaria, and unto the rest beyond the river, peace and at such a time. In other words, you always date your letter, and here the king is going to answer. 18, the letter which ye sent unto us hath plainly read before me, hath been plainly read before me. I got it down, translated the whole business. 19, and I commanded, and search hath been made, and it is found that this city of old time hath made insurrection against kings, and that rebellion and sedation hath been made therein. And of course there's a long list of it because God was on their side, all right? Now isn't it amazing when you start out even today to build a work for God, Satan's not going to like it. This is just going to take a little side trip here at how Satan can use people through their greed, through their weakness, through their fear. If you're going to serve God, you got to be bold. And you know, as a student of His Word, if you have properly covered the Word, you can't help but be bold. You would make mincemeat out of scribes like this, you know, in your boldness for God. By this I mean, if you ever start a work, don't be one of these quitters that the first little time somebody ruffles the water, what is that compared? I mean, this is dangerous. This king could have sent an army and killed a whole bunch of them. Do you think it will bother them? Do you think they will stop building now? Well, certainly they're going to have an order to. But will they? Well, I don't know. Let's see what they're made out of. But what I'm saying, in your life, don't wilt like a hothouse lily every time somebody ruffles the waters around you a little bit. Handle it. You can cut it, okay? Because you will have adversaries, because that is one of Satan's names. And if you're doing God's work, even by setting an example in your family, in a community, Satan's going to get to you if he can. I don't know how easy how easy is it to get to you? I hope it can happen. Verse 20. There have been mighty kings also over Jerusalem, which have ruled over all countries beyond the river, and toll, tribute, and custom was paid unto them. I mean, they were a mighty people where you got this building going up, this house of God. Verse 21. And this is the king answering back. Here comes the sad news. This is the judge's decision. 21. Give ye now commandment to cause these men to cease, and that this city be not builded, until another commandment shall be given for me. 22, take heed now that you fail not to do this. Why should damage grow to the hurt of the kings? Boy, I mean, he didn't waste much time, did he? Getting the letter in there, we don't want to be hurt. Now, this was a great place. Hey, in the first place, always settle this in your mind. You cannot stop God, okay? God ordered the city rebuilt. God caused even the predecessor of this king to give order, that's to say Cyrus. God himself surnaming Cyrus 137 years before he was born. Do you think for one moment that this little order from Ahasuerus, this present king, is going to stop God? Who do you serve, man or God? I'm saying this so that you be certain that you keep your present day life in proper perspective as to who's in charge and also who you are. You're a child of God, and if God instructs us to do a certain thing, we're going to do it. We will be successful at it. We will do it the way God instructs us by God's will, which is to say, this word. It will always be pleasing to who it should be pleasing to, and that's all you really should be concerned with. Well, it might offend someone. Well, who cares? Who cares if God's will offends some? I don't. Neither should you. In other words, always be fair, correct, and peaceful. That's the way God's way is. But if somebody can't deal with that, hey, that's tough. That's just real tough. But anyway, no, you got some people out on the frontier here. There's not all that many of them. And they got some. Those Nethinim would run like a bunch of rabbits if a battle took place. Most of them, they're just paid. They're just there. So anyway, the king sends the letter, verse 23. Now when the copy of King Artaxerxes' letter was read before Raham and Shimshai, old sonny boy the scribe, and their companions, they went up in haste to Jerusalem, wasting no time. Load the donkey, let's whip him up. Haste to Jerusalem unto the Jews, and made them to cease by force and power. I mean, they had the paper in their pocket. The king had sent the word by arm and power. They stopped them. Time to stop building, boys. Verse 24. Then ceased the work of the house of God, which is at Jerusalem. So it ceased unto the second year of the reign of Darius, king of Persia. Now, we see that they gave into it. Did they have a choice? Well, I suppose that history has it that they didn't have all that much of a choice. But there will very soon appear on the scene an old man, and he's one of the minor prophets of the 12. His name's Haggai. Now, you see, the sad part is when they stopped building the temple, they were still building their own little houses. And Haggai said, whoa, hey, your houses are sealed. That means paneled. That's fancy. But what about God's house? I mean, he had to charge him up that it's time to get started back to work here. I suppose that it certainly goes against the grain of a servant of God to have to take orders from Satan and his cohorts, but always wisdom overcomes anything negative if you do it God's way. So it will be built. But the important thing that you must remember, when we're talking about God's house, we're talking about the temple. When Christ was about to be crucified at his trial, he said, you destroy this temple, I will rebuild it in 3 days. That's the temple we're truly interested in here. In building the temple of the many-membered body, you're going to have much opposition. You might as well get set for it. That's life. But any good servant loves competition, right? Loves opposition to a degree. It makes the work more interesting. Because we're going to just plow them out of the road like a snow plow plowing cold spirits from the road of life. We're going to make mincemeat out of them. Anything that comes against our Father, in wartime or any other time, hadn't got a chance. Why? God's in control. He's on the throne. God blesses those that bless him. And this nation is certainly blessed. I thank our Father for that. So again, keeping your mind and your sight on the true temple, the true tabernacle, which is to say Christ and the family. All right, don't miss the next lecture, all right? These things are simply a schoolhouse of what you should know in preparation of even the end times. And this book, again, I would remind you. Now, I probably should say for the student, many are going to look and say, well, he said this book was about 450 years before Christ. It says here 550. Well, you see, there's a 110-year era. And a wise student knows in Jeremiah, what is it, chapter 24, 25, when Israel's calendar is corrected to the kings of the Gentiles' calendar, because you see, the year of a king was figured to round numbers. Let's take Jehoiakim. He was only in 3 months. Jehoiakim was in only 3 months. Well, it was counted a year. You know, so things fall off, but it's real easy to understand that. I go by facts, okay? So anyway, don't miss the next lecture. Listen a moment, won't you?